Well, there you have it. The joke writes itself. Barça threatens to take action. That's how Marca headlined it. Then you go into the article and it says Barça. They're considering sending a formal complaint to UEFA, that organization that forgave at first. Let's see, because the case is open and it's suspended, and we're going to wait for the next developments regarding the case that Zephyrin mentioned, the most serious in the history of football, which he said was the most serious thing he had ever seen in his life in football. And after a conversation with Laporta and all that, well, it was all water under the bridge, right? But that case was never closed, by the way. I mean, Barça is in no position right now to act tough with UEFA. Come on, let them go, let them go. Besides, those formal complaints, where do they end up anyway? It's just absurd. And then, as we've talked about in the last videos, there's the whole thing about being right, which is another issue, isn't it? The red card is crystal clear. Now let's look at a few more things. And about Musso with Puvil, that pass inside the 6-yard box, whether it's a handball or not. Let's see examples where it wasn't called and one where it was. But come on, they're not right. They're just not right. Not about what happened yesterday, and they have no reason to complain about anything at all. Hey, were you the club that paid a senior refereeing official for 20 years? In your competitions, domestic competitions, not just in La Liga, it also included the Super Cup and Copa del Rey, right? And UEFA looked the other way. But I don't think that's the case now. Recently, we saw Florentino and Zephyrin together in the director's box. They've been together before, even during disagreements, but now they get along well. And that UEFA and Madrid, there's an agreement there which could make all of this smoother. And also, as we've been saying a lot, and soon we'll talk with Juan Luis Martín de Pozuelo, there's a movement there led by this Catalan lawyer and supported by many of us to open another avenue. And I still trust that this has a great future, but, well, we'll talk about that later. Well, that's this morning's news regarding what happened yesterday, which we'll talk about in a moment. Also, I don't know where that formal complaint will end up. I think they're going to file it because they think they're the law. I mean, they can pay a judge. And at the same time, they can complain about things like this without anything happening to them, because nothing ever happens to them until it does. But there's something very important that has to do with Real Madrid. Let's also listen to Arbeloa. I couldn't do the show live today with the press conference of Real Madrid's coach ahead of tomorrow's match. Madrid plays tomorrow, Friday, which is a strange schedule for Madrid. Well, we already played against Celta, right, on a Friday. But maybe someone could be confused. I was the first one a few days ago. I didn't even remember that Madrid was playing this Friday at the Bernabeu against Girona in a league that, well, they've basically thrown away. But let's wait, because anything can happen here too. And Arbeloa said, and now we'll hear him, that Militao is going to play, and he had some very kind words for him. By the way, we might remember this in a later video, because it's incredible that Madrid has had to do without Militao for so long in recent seasons. A center back who, when he's fit, is the best in the world, in my opinion and in his coach's opinion. And anyway, today, everything was completely normal. Well, he already played against him last weekend and even scored against Mallorca, and also the other day against Bayern. And we can see him there in the background, Mendy, who Arbeloa said will play a few minutes. I don't know about that. Regarding Carvajal, he only mentioned 3 players. Militão will start, Jude Bellingham will start, and Camavinga as well, because Arbeloa was asked about Camavinga. Arbeloa was asked whether he will replace Tchouaméni with Eduardo or not, but he didn't make it clear, although he did talk about them. Well, about Camavinga's strengths and so on, because he also talked about his weaknesses the other day. Well, let's see. But look, we have 3 starters there, and Arbeloa doesn't usually do that. Militao, Jude Bellingham, and Camavinga against Girona, and Mendy for a few minutes, probably with a view to starting at the Allianz. Let's all hope so for Madrid's sake, right? Because between Carreras and Fran Garcia, right now I choose Fran Garcia. But it's true that to defend a guy like Lisey, you don't need someone like Fran. You need someone like Mendy, even if it's that job the Frenchman always does for us, only to get injured again afterwards. Poor guy, let's knock on wood. Well, even if it's just those little things he suddenly gives us, like that game against City, good old Furlan. All right, now let's listen to Arbeloa. Like I said, let's get back to what happened yesterday. Many remembered that Kubarsí had already done this in Spain, and what's the point there? Coincidentally, he hadn't given a red card, and what a coincidence that it wasn't Montero either. To the Barça defender in that match against Athletic, which was a play from that game, Barça won it. It was a decisive play because I think they weren't losing by just one goal. Atletico, it was tied at 0, and would it have changed the game? Absolutely not. I remember that I got, well, criticism and dislikes and so on in the videos because I had doubts about this red card and why. I'm going to compare it to yesterday's. There's a common denominator. Kubarsí usually does this, and he doesn't do it by accident. I already said yesterday that this action with Giovanni Simeone could be bad luck, but reviewing this occasion and others that the Barça defender has been involved in, it's not a coincidence. When he sees that he's lost his position and a player is facing him and could be the last man, he does something that seems accidental, but it's not. And it's to stick his leg out a little from behind so that the other guy trips. They always catch him. In this case, it ended with just a yellow card because I think that yellow, even if it annoys us, and I said, hey, honestly, I might sound suspicious, but to me that didn't seem like a red, or at least it was on the borderline. What happened yesterday, though, is absolutely a red. It's because even though Iñaki Williams is going for the ball was way out of reach. Let's see if the ball shows up here. One moment, I can't play it normally. Well, it's likely that John Garcia, the Barça goalkeeper, would have gotten there first. And besides, Iñaki was very far from the ball. What happened yesterday? Now he could have easily been given a red card that day. We've seen stranger things, well, like Hausens in Anoeta, for example, right? But what happened yesterday, if he doesn't do the same thing, exactly the same, because he looks harmless, yeah, he seems like he hasn't done anything wrong, but he's going to do it. I mean, he wants the other guy to trip, and that's why he touches him a little. But come on, even if he goes behind Giovanni, I said, is his name Giovanni? This guy, what's his name? Giuliano Simeone, even if he goes behind him, he still has a clear path there. And Kubarsí realized he'd lost that race. That's why he sticks his leg out. It's no coincidence. Therefore, a red card? Absolutely. I mean, there's no one who can argue about this. And then that difference compared to Spain, well, there's no need to compare it with that one from Iñaki. It's basically saying that Barça gets refereed one way or another in Europe compared to Spain. I mean, let's see. If you look at Barcelona, just by looking at these stats we saw yesterday, let me see where I have them here. Just by looking at these stats, it's clear, right? In La Liga and the Cup, plus 56. In the last 10 seasons, 95 for the rivals and 37 for Barcelona. In the Champions League, minus 5-8 for the rivals and 13 for Barcelona. I mean, anyway, there's no need to compare a series of specific plays, right? Just by looking at the numbers, there you have it. And not only that, regarding the action of David Raya and of Musso and Pubel, which they're comparing with that one from Raya at Arsenal and that Aston Villa one. Let's see if I have it here. Here it is. Look, it's being compared, for example, with this one. The precedent where a penalty wasn't called, okay? It was David Raya who passed the ball to his teammate at Arsenal. This was 2 years ago. From like he was going to take a goal kick. I mean, this one was even more obvious to his teammate. And on top of that, the ball leaves the 6-yard box. It leaves the 6-yard box. The referee understood that it was, and later it was explained that it was like, well, a childish mistake and that he wasn't going to call a penalty for that. I didn't like that explanation as much as I liked yesterday's, which is I interpret that the ball wasn't in play when Musso passed it to Puvil. There's another example also in Europe in an Aston Villa versus Bruges match. But of course, let's see, these are examples where the ball leaves the goal area. Those are actual goal kicks. And besides, here he's not passing it to him directly. He's passing it ahead of him. This one was clear. About yesterday, there are a couple of details. First of all, and I insist on this, the ball doesn't leave the goal area. I think that's important, although Musso could have easily picked it up with his hand and given it to his teammate, because it would never have been interpreted as putting the ball into play, right? However, he passes it with his foot, And I mean, out of the three we've analyzed, I think this one is the most obvious, that there was no intention to restart play there. The goalkeeper didn't want to restart play. That's another thing. Giuliano Simeone said in the mixed zone that when both center backs are on the sides, his goalkeeper never takes the restart. It's always the center backs who do it directly. And then there's another issue, which is to know if Lamine Yamal, when Musso passes the ball to his teammate, if Lamine Yamal is inside the box or not. Let's pause it there on the frame. Look, what do we see here? Is he really stepping inside or not? He doesn't seem to be stepping inside, but the image isn't clear. He might be touching the line with the tip of his foot. But let's see. If Barça has been saved from a lot of goals by millimeters, then we would have to see if by millimeters he's stepping or not. Because in that case, everything Barça is asking for would be absolutely invalidated. Anyway, as we've said, I mean, I think the intention is clear. And the referee, and Mateo Lajos explained it yesterday on Movistar Plus, the referee has to interpret that kind of action. And there is always, or as Mateo Lajos said, there is always how do you say it in Latin? A dubito pro reo, right? Which means, I don't know if it applies to this case as well, which means that the one who might be committing the foul, well, is not. He's not doing it on purpose, although anyone would say, hey, to comply with the law, it doesn't matter if you do it on purpose or not. But well, in this kind of actions, since they are absolutely extraordinary actions, a referee said, not me, Mateo Lajos said, not me, that he fully understood the decision that had been made. Kovacs, that this, more Kovacs than the one who was on VAR, who, by the way, yesterday I got confused. Kovacs, he is indeed Romanian. The one on VAR was German, which is why Flick said, look, a German. I don't know what kind of argument that is. Like, look, on top of that, a German. What does it matter if he's German, if he's your nationality? It doesn't matter. But what mattered here was what the referee on the field said or interpreted. Anyway, I insist, screw him. Besides, another thing that's incredible, and Flick asked for it, and so did many others. They said that this then was the second yellow card for Pubel. Sorry, if they had called a handball, that's not a yellow card, not in any way. He's not stopping a dangerous ball. He's not meeting the criteria that would warrant a yellow card for a handball. Even if it was the second one, it wasn't a yellow card, so they're asking for things that aren't warranted. They should just file a formal complaint with UEFA. All right, let's listen to Arbeloa, because this is what the Real Madrid coach had to say when he was asked about the refereeing decisions. And once again, Arbeloa handled it well in this case. And they've asked him several times too about the referees in Barça. Wait a moment, the audio here.
You have -2 in the league, and Barcelona has 65 in their favor. And in the Champions League, you have 3 in your favor and 12 against. Do you think they're refereed differently in Spain than in Europe?
Well, I think you all know my opinion about what has happened in Spanish football for so many years, and that sometimes it still happens, and I'm not going to change my mind.
Well, always there, sticking to his line. It's true that Jose Luis Sanchez's question, well asked, was a bit leading with those shocking numbers we've seen. But look, I had this thing about Mbappé prepared, which is the next topic and what I'm going to finish with. But I want to recall when they asked him about this again, trying to get him to talk. And this is what Arbeloa answered. Let's see if I chose the right moment.
I would like to know if you think Barcelona's complaints yesterday about the controversy are fair regarding that controversial play with Puyol. Well, no, I don't want to get into that kind of assessment. We've already seen what happened last weekend.
And what keeps happening many weeks. So, well, my opinion is out there. As I said before, that's my opinion, and that's the one I'm going to keep. Because it's what I keep seeing week after week. Well,
he repeats himself a third time. Arbeloa will be criticized, but it doesn't matter. He has to stick with it. Not be like when they ask him about the referees and Barcelona, just superficially saying, well, let's not talk about the referees. They're doing what they can. No, excuse me. I mean, there's a very serious issue here that happened for many years. And today, on top of that, we're still seeing things similar to what happened back when they were paying, right? Alvaro was fantastic there. About the Mbappé issue and the other day, well, they're going to mention it in the question. I think it's relevant since he needed to explain something he said earlier. Arbeloa, after the match against Bayern Munich, kind of hinting at whether Mbappé chooses which games to play.
Hi, Alvaro. Good morning. Javier Herrera from Cadena Ser. I want to ask you about something you said in the press conference after the match against Bayern. A Mbappé who wants to be Mbappé every day. Isn't he Mbappé every day? Yes, no, I don't think it's Mbappé. I want players who want to be every day.
And when I say that, I think it's important to want to be yourself beyond the talent and quality they have. My players, it's clear that you can't play a Champions League quarterfinal every day, nor every match where your motivation is very high. That's when holding yourself to a high standard comes in. Wanting to be your best version, to be your best version every day. And when you want to be your best version every day, it goes beyond the talent you have, right? It's about attitude, commitment, effort, and desire. I think that's what we need from the Real Madrid players. That tomorrow, when they play against Girona, they feel that they have to shine, that they have to play a great match, regardless of whether it's one of the 38 league games they play, as if it were a quarterfinal. That's what we need from our players, from our team, that they want to be themselves every day, that they're willing to give their best. And it's clear that it's not easy, but that's what we need from this team, from these players, that they go out on the field and that their biggest motivation is to give their best.
Arbeloa's digs are always very subtle because he doesn't want to cross that fine line where it seems like he's criticizing them and all that. There's definitely a criticism here, for sure. And I thought that after the question, he was going to say, no, I didn't mean that. He says, no, not just with Mbappé. It actually goes even further. With the rest of the players, well, I think that's just fine. Because that's the message that we've always, for a very long time, tried to, well, who are we, right? The fans or the commentators and so on, to Real Madrid's squad who do, in fact, pick their matches. It's about wanting to be that player you are every day. Then everything has to be well held together by a good tactical structure, and the coach has to be good, etc. But we're going back to the same thing. Was Xabi Alonso a good coach? Xabi Alonso was a good coach. Is Arbeloa a good coach? Of course he is. Was Ancelotti a good coach? Of course he was. When players tune out, saying they don't like or believe someone or find them annoying, and this one, because we don't take him seriously like a joke, well, then what happens is what happens. The players pick which games they want to play. Arbeloa is right to remind them here, and not just Mbappé, but the rest as well. Will they listen to him? Well, let's see. But anyway, he's absolutely right. And I think the touch is pretty clear. It's another thing whether they understand it, and another thing whether the players understand it, see themselves in it, and whether it really gets through to them. That's a different story. There are a lot of filters after the message. And maybe, well, look, it just doesn't reach them. Anyway, I hope everything goes well for you. Hit like if you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to the channel, comment, and share. As always, I remind you that you have the link here in the video description to get the first Real Madrid audiobook, the first audiobook that is created directly for audio. Skipping print of the greatest story ever told. We just celebrated. A little over a month ago, we celebrated 124 years of history, the greatest story of any club in the world, and it's 50 minutes that are really good, I think. That's what people who have already listened to the audiobook have told us. Like I said, you have the link below in the description of this video to get it. And also, when you get it, you get a 3-month subscription to the website, which has ad-free videos where we get together during the matches for Telegram chats. And we comment on the game as it happens. There are also talks every Thursday and so on. I think that, well, and also you support the channel because it's the membership for this YouTube channel. And as you know, I moved it off this platform and onto my own website, Miguel Serrano TV. See you in the next one. Thanks for being there.